5, which is a presentation on Austin Energy's Resource Generation and Climate Protection Plan to 2035. Ready to
Lisa, are you able
welcome.
to share your screen with us?
Yes, happy to do so.
Okay, perfect.
Make sure. Can you see it?
Yep, coming through.
Excellent. Should I just jump right in?
Yep, you're good to go. Thank you.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. I am Lisa Martin, Austin Energy's Deputy General Manager and Chief Operating Officer, and I'm here to fulfill a request to share with you a little bit about our Resource Generation and Climate Protection Plan to 2035, which was adopted by City Council, Austin City Council, in December of 24. All right, I'm just going to take a step back and tell you just a little bit about Austin Energy. We're celebrating 130 years of serving both the city of Austin and surrounding areas this year. We're the third largest municipally owned utility in the nation, serving just over 500,000 customers. And you can see from the outline of our service territory in orange that we are both in Travis and Williamson counties, serving about 50% of our service territory is the city of Austin and 50% is outside. And one item that's important about the way that we operate is that we are a vertically integrated utility in the ERCOT wholesale market. And sometimes that people say, what does that mean? This next slide kind of shares the summary of that. We not only own and operate power generation, but we transmit power across transmission lines. We distribute it to people's homes and businesses. And then we also send people their electric bills and serve as the call center and the customer service arm of things. Within the ERCOT region, a lot of entities are one or just a few of these items, and very few entities are vertically integrated, going all the way from generation to customer service. So Austin Energy is a leader on the path to carbon-free, and we demonstrate that in a couple of ways on this slide. And this is in large part because of our resource generation and climate protection plans that have been adopted and having increasingly aggressive environmental and renewable carbon-free goals over the years. When it comes to looking at our carbon-free generation in fiscal year 2024, of all the generation that we produced, 72% of it was carbon-free. You can see the breakdown of that in the donut chart on the right-hand side, largely wind, solar, biomass, and nuclear. And then comparing that to other larger regions, so within ERCOT, which is most of Texas or the United States, that percentage is closer to 40, 42, 43%. So our generation plans have always set us forth in being as clean and environmentally friendly as possible. It's really that last percentage, getting to the 100%, that is always the hardest to do. And that's what our plan sets us forth for here. So a little bit about why we have a generation plan to 2035 and why we were going through this effort over the past year. The most recent plan prior to this past December was adopted in March of 2020, and that plan went through the year 2030. And if you think back to 2020, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but a lot of things have happened both locally and in our world. So this was before COVID. This was before the polar vortex that led to Winter Storm Uri in February of 2021. More locally, we retired some of our older Decker steam units, and that changed a little bit of the supply and demand here locally. That, in addition to some of the ERCOT market changes and increased energy costs that resulted from Winter Storm Uri, led to a situation where we didn't have the ability to bring enough power in to Austin and to our service territory as easily as before. And that manifested in congestion costs. You can think of congestion a little bit like traffic costs. And in certain years when the congestion was the highest, we had costs of well into the 130, 140, $150 million that got passed on to our customers. Not only is that an increased cost, but it's also an increased reliability risk. And then when you add to that, we continue to see year over year peak demand growth. Whether you're talking about the summer or the winter, people are using more energy at the highest peak times. And so all of these situations add to a changing energy landscape that our existing generation plan was not created to navigate. And so we needed to make some adjustments. And so we set off on a path to adjust our resource generation and climate protection plan. I want to take just a step back before I tell you about the community outreach and just say, a generation plan essentially says, how do you meet your customers' energy needs? And usually it's done at the lowest possible cost. But given all the challenges I just described on the last slide, we had to think about this in a more holistic way. And we did that with an extensive amount of community outreach. Back in August of 23, we started having those conversations, and we did throughout all of last year, whether it was through stakeholder workshops or a survey that had a very high response rate, over 7,500 responses, and partnering with others and working with our commissions and councils. We had an extensive amount of outreach and feedback from the community and our stakeholders. And time and again, they reiterated, no matter what form it was, that their top priorities were reliability, affordability, environmental sustainability, and energy equity, which they defined as making sure that we were able to provide energy to the most vulnerable in our communities. And so we needed to find a way to bring all of those priorities into the mix, recognizing that sometimes there are trade-offs when you're trying to hit certain goals. There are trade-offs across these priorities. So how do we find the best possible path forward? In addition to the community outreach, we also had an industry-driven, industry expert-driven approach where we partnered with a lot of other industry experts, some locally here at University of Texas at Austin, and then other nationwide experts. And you see the list here for various aspects of our resource generation planning efforts. And so what ultimately resulted in the resource generation plan to 2035? Well, as I described a few slides ago about our changing energy landscape, this plan that was adopted in December of 24 sets forth a flexible approach to reaching our clean energy future. We start by prioritizing customer energy solutions, and the order here really matters. I'll go into more detail about what each of these areas are on the next several slides, but we balance our customer energy solutions with developing local solutions while still striving and continuing our commitment to decarbonization. And then knowing that in order to reach our aggressive and important goals, we have to further our culture of innovation. Let me show you a little bit about what that looks like as we put all of these aspects into our toolkit. Prioritizing customer energy solutions is really about knowing that the cleanest, the most affordable, and perhaps the most reliable way to serve a customer is either to not have to serve them at all because they didn't need the electricity to begin with, or to serve them locally right where they need the power. And so customer energy solutions are the grid edge devices like rooftop solar, battery storage, electric vehicles, energy efficiency and demand response, all of the efforts that really meet the customer where they are and help to manage the demand that they need. And so our plan focuses on a number of goals, excuse me, in each of those areas. And you see some of them spelled out here. And some of these are adding on to our previous plans, and some of them are above and beyond in new ways. So like incentivizing customer-sited batteries is something that's new in this plan, whereas the energy efficiency, demand response, and solar goals we've had in the past, we've increased those goals in this plan. As I mentioned before, one of the main drivers and barriers to our existing plans was congestion and having problems bringing power into our service territory to serve our load. And so we need to make sure that we are also looking at developing local solutions right here in our service territory. And those come in a number of different fashions. So first of all, we need to increase the thoroughfares or the transmission capacity to bring power into our service territory. We also need to make sure that we can have large or utility scale batteries and solar. And so we have some goals for that, 125 megawatts of utility scale batteries in just the next couple of years. And then also looking at if we are going to add any additional peaker units, we need to make sure that we're looking at additional and more efficient units so that when we use these units, which are kind of like the last resort for our to meet our needs here locally, that we're doing it with the cleanest possible solution as opposed to our older units that we have to rely on now. Again, our plan has always had a high commitment to achieving decarbonization, and we continued and reiterated that commitment with our goal of 100% carbon-free by 2035. In order to do that, we have to continue our efforts to move away from the Fayette Power Project and continue to use it as little as possible in the meantime, adding more clean and renewable energy and making sure that we're improving our local air quality through the plan has carbon intensity guardrails and reducing emissions as a whole. And then finally, in order to get to 100% by 2035, we know that existing technology and will not take us there alone, and we have to continue to further our culture of innovation and look for all the opportunities of emerging and evolving technologies so that we're ready to adopt them and take advantage of them when they are available to us to help us reach those clean energy goals. And that includes exploring advanced nuclear technologies, partnering with research and development entities, looking further at virtual power plants and exploring the distributed energy resource management system, or a DERMS. There are a number of new solar opportunities that we're ramping out, and then also, or ramping up, and also piloting our geothermal generation as well. So a number of different areas. There's more details in the plan, but I think these infographics provide a good high-level overview of the most salient points of the plan. And so all of this, thanks to unanimous adoption from the City Council and a great stakeholder process with good feedback, we collaboratively built a bridge that will lead us to our clean energy future. And the plan is set up to allow us to navigate a changing energy landscape, to continue to protect our most vulnerable, be resilient to extreme weather. And again, most and foremost, it was a community-informed plan. I hope that provides you with a little bit of an update or an overview of what we were able to accomplish, and I'm happy to turn it back over to you or take any questions you may have.
Great, I appreciate the presentation. Any questions from the group? Feel free to, we have time for maybe one or two, or throw them into the chat and we'll send those over to Austin Energy for a reply.
Thanks, Anton.
It's really
Thank you
informative.
so much.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.